and share screen. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Okay, so I'm Carla DeBaco, and I'm with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Steuben County. And we do a speaker series 4 times a year. We try to highlight some of the programs that we have here at Cooperative Extension, whether it's finance, energy, agriculture, nutrition, or youth. And this one obviously is energy. And we're just thrilled to be able to have Erica Herman with us today. She is the campaign director of Heat Smart FLX South, which is under Cornell Cooperative Extension of Schuyler County. And she's been working with the residents and energy efficiency since 2018. Before that, she monitored invasive plants in Cayuga Lake and provided outdoor and environmental education for middle schoolers with the nonprofit Nature's Classroom in Connecticut. So we're really excited to have her with us tonight. And Erica, take it away.
Awesome. Well, Carla, thank you for the great introduction. Hopefully I can do a great job, as you say, and thank you everyone for joining us. So welcome to our program, Ask Me Why I'm Pumped. This is going to go on we'll be chatting for a bit less than an hour, and then we'll have up to about half an hour or more for questions and answers. So at various points, we'll be taking some brief breaks. Carla will be monitoring. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can save them for the end. And at each brief break point, Carla will pick 2 to 3 of those questions. And any questions we don't get to, we will make sure we get answered at the end of our program. So thank you everyone so much. We're gonna start out by we're curious who's coming today. So Carla, would you be able to pop up? Actually, I guess we'll save that to then. We'll save that poll for the end for something special. All right, so the Heat Smart FLX South program is one of 22 sister programs that are spread across various parts of New York State. We are community-based, and the idea is that we are through a nonprofit. Ours is through Cornell Cooperative Extension of Schuyler County, to provide that unbiased information and also get you connected to the local resources and programs. So this program serves the counties of Schuyler, Seneca, Steuben, and Yates. So thank you for coming out today. And the goal is to get people empowered and pumped to adopt heat pumps as a form of clean heating. And we'll be chatting about those benefits and much, much more. And also we'll be touching briefly today about some of the weatherization assistance programs that we can connect people to. So if you're feeling a bit chilly, or as things warm up, feeling a bit too warm, we definitely have some options available. Our goals with the program are to help decrease heating and cooling costs, help increase comfort in the home, health and safety, all while also decreasing fossil fuel usage in our communities across the region. So we are supported by an entity called NYSERDA, a New York State Energy and Research Development Authority. And again, we're at the Extension office in Schuyler County, but proudly supported by all of our CCE, Cornell Cooperative Extension sister programs in each of the 4 counties that we serve. So thank you again for joining us, and let's dive right in. So to look at a bit of a bigger picture, I wanted to chat a bit about average home energy use. So when we're looking at this chart, we're seeing that about 75% of our general usage of energy is coming from heating and cooling needs. So the average person, and this is considering all types of fuel systems, it could be anything from electric heating, like electric resistance, it could be fuel, oil, coal, pellet stoves, any kind of energy bills you'd be paying. The average New Yorker pays about $2,500 a year. So maybe that's at the amount you're at, maybe a bit under or over. So the possibility with heat pump adoption and weatherization is being able to save hundreds of dollars or more a year by this adoption. So who is the Heat Smart program for, and who can adopt these clean heating cooling options and weatherization programs? So that is for homeowners, renters, landlords, and we also do a focus on small commercial as well as nonprofits in our communities. What are these pathways to heat pumps? So there's a couple different tracks we can go, but something that can be a great way to start out is by weatherizing our space first to get it nice and cozy, so that when we put in a nice brand new heat pump for our heating and cooling needs, that it is sized well, and that'll be great for working in our home or small business. All right, so weatherizing, like I said, we're going to touch a bit on this before we delve into heat pumps as one of the steps. So I like to call this weatherizing is kind of like the sweater of building blocks. So I want you, we're going to do a bit of a hypothetical analogy here. So feel free to close your eyes if you want or not. This is just a kind of fun activity I like to do. But I want you to think of yourself, basically the equivalent of a house. So say it's a couple weeks ago and we had like a really chilly cold snap and you're putting on your coziest, comfiest sweater. Maybe it has a wacky animal pattern on it. Maybe it's just a nice basic color. So you pop that on and you walk out the door. And as you're walking around, you're realizing, wow, like I'm pretty cozy, even though it's cool out. I have my insulation on, so to speak. Well, you walk around what I call the country block, or maybe you're in town and you walk around a literal block. And all of a sudden, this cold air comes right through your sweater, and you run back to the house or make your way back, and you decide, whew, I have some insulation on with my sweater, but I need a bit more. I need some air sealing, so to speak. I'm putting a quote unquote motion. So you pop on a windbreaker over that nice cozy sweater, and you walk outside and you brace yourself for the wind, but you don't feel it. That's because you now have a combination of insulation and air sealing. So those are the building blocks we're looking for a house: insulation and air sealing to get it nice and cozy. So how do we go about that? Where do we even get started? There's actually something called a free home energy audit, and we'll be chatting about the business version a little later. So the free home energy audit is done by professionals that we work with, weatherization contractors, and I like to call it a doctor's visit, essentially, for your home. They check for air leaks, they check what's going on with insulation, has it been sagging? Maybe there was an addition put on many years ago and there's just dirt underneath we didn't know about, and that's why the room's cold. They look at appliance efficiency, could be anything from like a washer and dryer to stoves, your current heating system. They'll look at health and safety aspects, and it's also an opportunity to check out possible heat pumps that may or may not be a fit for your home. So it's a great opportunity of sharing information. I feel like it's really empowering. It takes about 1 to 3 hours. And so you can provide all the information of your interests and concerns, and they can do some of that detective work to see what's going on. All right, so you had the doctor's visit for your house done, the free energy audit, and now you're like, okay, I definitely want to do some of this, but how do I pay for this? Are there any options available? So for households that are HEAP income eligible, limited with income, or the equivalent of a family or household of 4 people with a gross, that's pre-tax income of under about 60,000, there's some great options. If you're a NYSEG or other major utility customer, you can possibly access something called the Empower program. Or if you are municipal electric only, or NYSEG, et cetera, there's another program called the Weatherization Assistance Program. So there's 2 different ones. Both look at providing funds to help with insulation and air sealing. Again, those building blocks. The Empower program can look at fridge replacement. It can look at other energy efficiency upgrades in addition, as well as LED light bulbs and much more. So that Empower program is a New York State program and can provide up to $10,000 of free upgrades at no cost to the homeowner, tenant, or landlord, which is great. The sister program I touched on briefly, the Weatherization Assistance Program, is a federal program. We call it WAP for short. And again, those building blocks of insulation and air sealing and safety, and they can possibly look at items in addition, such as windows, doors, or traditional heating systems. Windows and doors we tend to see more in mobile homes, but that could be a possibility for your house, depending how leaky it is as well, if you have a different type of housing situation. And that sister program can provide up to $6,000 of funds for eligible upgrades. All right, so say you're like, well, I know I have like a good friend or maybe a family member that program would benefit, but maybe you're saying to yourself, my income's a bit over that. Maybe I'd be better suited for what's called the state program Assist Home Performance. That has an income cutoff at less than about $120,000. So that looks at things, it's a 50-50 matching program of up to $5,000. It can provide items such as insulation, air sealing, heat pump water heaters, which if you're like, what Heat pumps come in water heater form. We'll chat about that later, and much more. So again, that's a matching program. If your income is higher than that, never fear. There's still another option. There are still the free energy audits, and there is a program called Comfort Home Program. This is also a New York State program. So this New York State has to be through NYSEG or another major utility company. And that's a program that can provide $1,000 to $4,000 of incentives for eligible measures such as air sealing of an insulation for maybe like your attic or your rim joist, fancy word for an area in your basement, and possibly windows. So those are different kind of package options that they incentivize, as well as low interest loans. If you are a small business and you're like, hey, what about me? How do I get a version of an energy audit? Definitely. So whether you are a municipal electric only customer, or you're a NYSEG or other major utility customer, if you are a small business or a nonprofit, there's a special audit through New York State called Green Jobs Green New York. You get a pre-selected contractor. Basically, there's a contractor in each region of New York State. And the idea for this is to get an unbiased energy audit. They're not the one who will be doing the work, but they will be doing the study and providing you through a report that you can use for decades to come. So they'll do an unbiased check of your lighting, your heating system, your building envelope, which again, those insulation, air sealing we're chatting about, and much more. They can additionally toss in doing what's called the clean heating and cooling screening, which is a fancy word for if you're interested in heat pumps, what that might look like. And after you get all the information, you can make an informed decision with their support with one of our vetted contractors to get work done. All right, so I want to take a quick break. If anyone had any questions that they wanted to put in the chat, or Carla, if there have been a couple that have accumulated that we'd like to touch on to answer, here's a great opportunity.
Nothing yet here, unless someone wants to unmute and ask a question.
Sounds like people are pumped to hear about the heat pump portion, Carla.
Okay.
All right, so with that, we'll jump right into the next portion of our presentation. All right, so chatting about heat pumps. How does a heat pump work? What is this kind of technology? Maybe you've heard about it through a neighbor who had one in, or maybe you've just heard the term on the radio. There's various ways you may or may not have heard this term. So what is it? Your fridge is actually an example of a heat pump. It's a version of that just does cooling, but it actually is a heat pump. So if you're used to the old-fashioned styles of fridges where you're told, like, don't touch the back, the coils are hot, or it's hot underneath, it's because it's essentially moving the heat out of the space to cool it. So your fridge is a heat pump. So again, how does this work? So with our traditional heating systems, one of the reasons they're not as efficient is because they're trying really hard to burn something to be able to create heat. Whereas if you have a heat pump, it's using existing heat around it in the air to generate our heating needs. So heat, whether you feel like it's warm or not, depending the time of year, it's all around us in the air, even in the winter, as well as in the ground, which we'll be chatting about the different types of heat pumps that utilize the air around us versus the ground heat. So heat pumps transfer this heat into or out of a space. If they're heating, they're moving the heat into the space. And if they're cooling, they're moving the heat out. So what are the two types of heat pumps? So I like to think of the topic of heat pumps like the trunk of a tree. So that's our base, heat pumps. And our two branches of that tree are air source heat pumps, and we also have ground source heat pumps. So if we're looking at this image, or if you're calling and I can describe it, we're looking at essentially a ground source heat pump of one of the versions we'll be talking about, which is a ducted option. And then in the other image on the left, we're looking at one of the versions of air source heat pumps called the mini split system. But let's dive a bit more into both of those types right now. So air source heat pumps get the name because where we think we're getting the heat or cold air from the air around us. They are 2 to 3 times more energy efficient than our typical expensive fossil fuels. And those expensive fossil fuels can be anything such as propane, fuel oil, or electric resistance heating, possibly kerosene as well. And like I said, instead of trying to burn something to create their own heat, they're using the air around them. So what are the different forms they come in? For my home, what might be a good option? Air source heat pumps come in 2 different versions. You can do, if you have an existing ductwork system in your basement, kind of all the metal tubes running around, or maybe you have it in your attic, you can possibly retrofit existing ductwork to do a full home air source heating system or cooling. Again, does both. If you don't have existing ductwork and you want to do an air source heat pump, another fit might be something called a mini split system. And I joke that's called mini split because half of it's on the outside and half on the inside. So in the image we're looking at right now, or if you're listening over the phone, thanks for calling in. We're looking at something on the outside that hugs the home or building called the outdoor condenser unit. So that is part A of a mini split air source heat pump system. So it's taking the air around the outside to convert it into heat or coolness for our home. Coming out of the back of that, I like to call it the tail. And that is the coolant lines that then travel to the various parts of your home to heat or cool. So in the image we're looking on this slide, there's actually an example of what is called a mounted unit. And the mounted unit is basically something, it kind of looks a little bit like an air conditioning unit, but again, we can heat or cool. And that works really well because it doesn't take up space. And actually, any kind of mini split system will come with a remote control. So if you can't reach the actual unit, that works well. So mini splits, you'll have 1 unit per space that you would like to heat or cool, which means you have more control of your climate. So say you have a space that's like a sewing room, or maybe you have a kid or grandkid who's at college or away for a while, you can keep their room cooler in the winter and have the other spaces you're regularly be using warmer for your comfort needs. So they work really well. Again, 2 portions for mini split, outdoor portion and indoor. You can also get the indoor portion in a floor mount system. It does have a little bit of a premium cost, but if that's something you like, or because of space constraints, you have more flexibility. So what is the cost of this type of technology? So if we're looking at a full home heating, meaning your primary heating source would be heat pumps. If you're looking at the air source version, it would be about $10,000 to $15,000 plus, not even looking at incentives, just outright. Mini splits you can do in a partial heating option. So say you have like a spare bedroom you built or something of that nature, or maybe an old space that you used to heat with like a wood stove that you want to transition to a new type of heating system. You can do partial heating where you just have 1 mini split unit or 1 or 2 throughout your home or small business. And there's incentives for that too. That could be anything from $3,500 to $5,000 per unit if you're doing like a partial heating with air source heat pumps. All right, but what about this other branch of the tree we're talking about? Something called ground source heat pumps. So ground source heat pumps are 4 to 5 times more energy efficient, again, than those expensive fossil fuel systems, such as our propane, fuel oil, or electric resistance heating. And you're like, well, the air source was 2 to 3 times more efficient. How is the ground source more efficient? It's 4 to 5 times more. The reason is because the outdoor portion actually lives underground. And underground, year round, it's a constant of about 50 to 55 degrees. So your heat pump doesn't have to work much harder to heat or cool from that temperature. Whereas for an air source heat pump, you have like that outdoor condenser unit that's out in the elements, or you have a ducted system where the basement may not be the best insulated and there's other things going on. So ground source heat pumps are really, really extra efficient. You can do a ducted version, again, a retrofit, or if you have a basement that has enough space, duct systems can be put in. Or you can do a water-based system. Sometimes you can retrofit a water-based system like radiant floor or some other options, but it'll depend on if your heating systems, what its temperature is. So you would chat with one of our partner installers or contractors to figure out that may or may not be a fit when it comes to retrofitting. The outside portion, again, we said that keeps it at that 50 to 55 degrees year round. For those coolant lines that are laid there, you can get in 2 different forms. There is what they call horizontal field, which is a fancy way of saying they take a bunch of space that they dig up about 6 feet down, and they lay a bunch of coolant lines. So it takes up a good amount of space, but it's less expensive than what's called the vertical field. If anyone has a water well or has heard of it, the same machinery that comes out to do a water well would come out to do the vertical version of the outdoor portion of a ground source heat pump. But they don't dig nearly as deep. So we got some different options. Without looking at any incentives for ground source heat pumps, we're looking at a cost of roughly $22,000 to $50,000+. But again, we'll be chatting about all the money that we can stack to bring the prices down for all those heating systems. All right, so what if my water heater is on its last legs, it's getting older, or it's just like, it's time to go. I need some other options. We need to part, I need a new water heater. There are things called heat pump water heaters actually, and these are 2 to 3 times more energy efficient than our standard water heaters, even compared to on-demand water heaters, which is a big deal. I remember when those first came out and were at the time the most efficient. Heat pump water heaters are really happy living in your basement. They tend to be a bit taller than the average water heater. So in this image, you see kind of the silver portion, which is the height of a regular water heater. And then the black portion on top is, I like to call it the brain. And that portion is the heat pump portion. So they stand a bit taller, so you need good clearance in your basement. The nice thing is that they provide dehumidification because again, they're using the air around it to help with heating your water. So if you have a damp basement or if you get puddles, it will definitely help with that. It might not eliminate it all if you have a lot of standing water, but it definitely helps. It also, again, like I said, it uses indoor air to provide the hot water. So we want it in spaces where we're not doing our regular living because it makes that space a bit cooler. And if there's really, really high needs, say you have a bunch of family that's come over for visiting, it will kick on electric resistance heating for those few times you have high demand. But they're really great and they can be really affordable. All right, Carla, it's time. I'm going to put Carla, our hostess, in the hot seat. So on this slide, we're talking about is ask Carla why she's pumped. So Carla actually had a version of heat pumps, mini split air source heat pumps actually installed in her home. So I wanted to ask her a couple of questions to share with us her experience. So Carla, thank you so much for being available and being amenable to chatting with us.
Sure.
So Carla, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself in general to start?
Okay. Well, I'm the communications coordinator here at Cornell Cooperative Extension in Steuben County in Bath. And I have been doing this work for about 21 years between Chemung County and Steuben County. And my job is to promote all the wonderful programs that we do here and let everyone know what's happening, like this speaker series.
That's great. So how did you first hear about heat pumps to start?
This is very recent. My boss installed them in her home last summer, basically for air conditioning. So we heard a little bit about it when she was raving about that. And then my husband started working on a brand new church building that is going on right now. And they installed them in the sanctuary. They had 4 of those mini splits right in the front of the sanctuary. And then you made a presentation to our staff meeting earlier this year, and we heard about them then.
That's great, Carla. No, it's great to hear that you get to hear it from multiple places, and then you feel like you can make an informed decision. So this is kind of piggybacking on what you just mentioned, but what made you want to actually adopt a heat pump into your home?
Well, I've lived there for 20 years now, and our main heat, we have electric, but it's really is only working in one room. And we have a tri-level house, and the wood stove is in the basement. So we would live in the basement where it's like 90 degrees, and the upstairs and the far upstairs were freezing. So plus, we'd get wood delivered to us, every month or so, and we have to go stack it. It's dirty, it's heavy. We're getting older, and that was kind of becoming a pain, having to put it into the house every couple days to keep feeding the wood stove. And there's dust, there's dirt. In the winter, we couldn't go anywhere because you know, you have to keep feeding it at least every 24 hours or the house gets cold.
A cold house is no good in the winter.
No.
So how did the process go from the moment you're like, all right, this is something we are interested in doing? How did that process work out from that to when you had them put in your home?
My husband, when he was working with that church, had talked with a couple installers and got them to come to our house to give us an estimate. The first one came and really wanted to put in a furnace, which meant he had to add all the ducting. And we're talking 3 levels, all of the confusion that would be involved with putting in ducting. And he was quoting us something like $13,000. And then if we wanted to add air, we were going to be another $4,000. The second installer came and said heat pumps would work. They'd be so simple to heat this whole house with heat pumps, with mini splits. And he said, we can do it for, I think it was a little over $9,000. You go, well, no question. We'll try that.
That definitely sounds like the better deal in that way.
Mm-hmm. They came, it only took them 2 days to put everything in. And they were there on a Thursday and a Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, we were turned off the wood stove and we were using it. It was great.
And were there any barriers that you kind of came across, or any kind of words of wisdom that you learned through the process?
Yeah, we had some problems. The installer that put them in, he said in 2020, he put in like 80 units in our region and no problems. Never had to go back, never had an issue. We get a 2021 model.
Oh, no.
And after those 2 wonderful days on the weekend of it running smoothly, we woke up on Monday morning. It was very cold out. And the house was like 35 degrees. I go, what happened? And apparently it had tripped a breaker and turned off in the night. And so the installer came and looked at it and said he wasn't sure what was wrong and had to get a factory rep out there. The factory rep wanted to go through 10,000 different options before he would say, well, we'll pay for you to change it or whatever. So we're still in that process where they've been evaluating it. And it's been working. They put something on the outside unit and it hasn't tripped and it's been working fine. So
Awesome.
I guess, you know, you get a new version of something, there might be a bug.
Yeah, so finding out, like, do they carry a couple of different brands, and you can kind of make an informed decision of what might be a fit.
Mm-hmm. The other barrier, of course, was the cost. I didn't know. We spend maybe $1,000 a year to buy wood. I thought, oh my gosh, what's this going to cost in electricity? I got my bill yesterday for the first month of it. And it was, if you figure $1,000, you're talking maybe $100 a month for the wood. The new bill was $80 more than what I usually pay. I'm ahead.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. And it's more convenient, like you said.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's awesome. And it sounds like your dog likes it too. What's your dog's name, Carla, in the picture that's shown here?
That's Shadow.
Yeah. So pet approved as well. That sounds great. And is there anything else you'd like people to know in general?
It's just so for me, it's very convenient, walk out of the house and not think about, oh, we got to put wood in, or maybe be gone 2 days and not worry. The other nice thing about it was, we haven't done this yet, but they said you can hook your smartphone up to it. Say you go away for a month or 2. I can look on the smartphone and see what temperature any of the rooms are, change it. If there's a problem, call somebody over to the house, whatever. So you can monitor it from afar, which is very cool.
That sounds so much fun. And then you can kind of play with that. Oh, great. Well, Carla, thank you so much for sharing about your experience. It's great to get like a well-rounded, and understanding of how this might work for someone's home or business. So thank you so much for sharing.
Welcome.
Before we get into the next portion, which is going to be chatting a bit about like the benefits and great things about heat pumps, we can pause to take a couple questions if anyone has anything in the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves. We will be chatting about incentives a little later on as well.
We have a couple questions.
Oh, great.
One is, do you know of the energy efficiency compared to natural gas or of the different heat pump options?
That's a really great question. So when you're looking at cost-wise, it's going to be, to be honest, it's going to be pretty comparable. So if you're looking just from like the cost aspect of running the heat pump versus natural gas, you're probably going to be about the same. It is like if you're looking at the heat pumps, they are going to be coming from like a greener option, because even if you're looking at like a NYSEG mix, 20% of that tends to be renewables. So you're still a bit ahead on that. But if you're looking at like efficiency and then like cost, it would be about on par for natural gas. And that's something we want to be transparent about.
Another question is, are there many contractors in the area that install and repair heat pumps?
That's a great question. So as part of our program, we actually have vetted and approved installers for both weatherization and heat pumps for our area. We currently have one weatherization contractor, and then 4 of our contractors do air source heat pumps and 3 do ground source. And they are companies that have been financially stable. They had to prove that as part of our vetting process. And also some of the companies have been around, for example, one of them has been around for like 2 different generations, and it's been passed on in the family. That's Daily Electric. Helco has been around for 37 years. And the other 2 companies, some of them have been really instrumental in bringing on ground source heat pumps. So we have some really stable installers in our area as part of our program that we're promoting. So that's a great question, because you need someone to fix it. It's kind of like if you have a specialty car and then something breaks and you're like, I need someone to fix it or get the part. So it's a great question. So the answer is yes.
Someone said they still have fuses and can't find a contractor, so it wouldn't work with them, right?
Are you talking about for like a electric box situation? Yeah. That's a good question. So one of the things, and I'll get back to your question. If I miss it, let me know. One of the things that sometimes happens when you install heat pumps is you might not have enough space on your current electrical box. So part of the installation would be upgrading your electrical box, or if you're getting a duct modification, can sometimes also be possible. So that can be wrapped right into, for getting the air source or ground source heat pumps installed, having the panel upgrade done. And they can provide if there's like what the separate cost for that might be as well. But it's possible, definitely.
Just 2 more questions.
No, great, love it.
Well, actually, he was asking me, and I have no idea. Does our heat pump have backup electric strips for cold nights?
Oh, that's a good question. So for the mini splits version of air source heat pumps, those do not have backup electrical resistance heating. The ducted version of air source heat pumps does have electric resistance backup. So those maybe like 5 days a year when it gets really cold, they can shift to that electric resistance backup.
And how many indoor units can you put on one outdoor unit?
Ooh, that's a good question. That actually would be a question for one of our installers. The heat pumps, when you get the mini splits, for example, that have those outdoor condenser units, they will come in different sizes, not necessarily like a visual size, but size in like the capacity that they can heat a space for like square footage. So that would probably depend on a couple different factors. If you're looking at doing like a partial heat load, where the incentive is based on each condenser unit, that's definitely a great question. I do not have the answer, but that is a good question that we can ask our installer partners. So let me do a note if there's an average number that you have per condenser unit.
I do know that in mine, we have the one outside unit, and on the 3 levels, we have 3 mini splits to that one unit.
Okay. Yeah, I went to, on the way back from traveling to Yates actually a couple of days ago, Oak Hill, which is like a big bulk food store, I stopped by, and they actually had one outdoor condenser unit, and I saw, unless there's another one on the back side of the building. And it looked like they had 4 to 6 mini splits in the space that I could visually see. So they hold a pretty good amount. Sometimes you'll get a unit. So if you look at Carla's, where it just looks like a single condenser unit, sometimes you'll get ones that kind of look like, if you ever have like a front loader washer and dryer where they're stacked, sometimes you can get condenser units that look like that, where it's still considered one condenser, but it's just like a larger size, if that makes sense. So I still have noted, I will check in with our contractors. Carla, if we want to make a note of that person's name, I can check back in with them when I get an answer.
Okay. One more question. For the electrical box upgrade, do you mean going from 110 to 220 or just more electrical space in general to the house for, to house the heat pump?
I think it has to do with the amps that you have in there for your system. I know that we recently, for example, got like an electric car because our other car was dying, and then we had a really, really good sale on that we could afford. And we had to actually do, we thought we would have to do a panel upgrade similar to what you do for heat pump, but at a smaller scale. But there was something that was untapped they were able to use. But I believe, from my understanding, it would be like an expansion of the amps.
We're all set here.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for the great questions. If there's a question that I didn't quite answer the way you had hoped, please feel free to loop back at the end when we have more time for questions, and I'll try to make sure we can get that answered. Or if I don't know, that I'll make a notation and then I'll get back to you. So thank you everyone. Appreciate it. This is great. All right. So we asked Carla why she's pumped. Ask me why I'm pumped. So I'm pumped because I really like chatting about heat pumps. But I'm really also excited to share with everyone the different benefits that we can reap from those. So again, I know we mentioned this a couple of times, but if you're looking at purely from cost savings perspective, we're looking at possibly down to 1/3 of the cost from our expensive propane, fuel oil, kerosene, electric resistance. They are cold climate made. They heat and cool. They have many health and safety benefits, and they can also help with lowering our carbon footprint. And they're really easy to take care of. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of a dive into each of these subjects. So in this image, we're looking at, this is actually from one of our sister states in Maine. So very similar, where they get those cold nights and days. So we're looking at annual heating cost comparison. So in this image, we're kind of looking at anything for a propane furnace where the cost, and this is rough. Remember, there's a lot of houses in different situations. So these are just like ballpark average prices. So we're looking at propane furnace where the cost could be, over $3,500, electric baseboard coming shy of that. Maybe you have an oil boiler that's between $2,000 to $2,500 to heat for the year. But when you look towards the very bottom at air or ground source heat pumps notated by that star, we're looking at costs of maybe a bit over $1,000. So looking at those expensive fuel systems where we can really drive that price down to adopt to heat pumps. All right, so cold climate efficiency. So they are made for cold temperatures. They work in different ways. Someone had chatted again about air source heat pumps with electric resistance backup. There are sister heat pumps that you find down south, such as Florida and the Carolinas, that are not cold climate. They're purely meant for providing cool air for the home. But up here where we get those really cold days or temperatures, we want the cold climate versions. And those are the types that we have installed through our program. So again, they're meant for these cold temperatures. I'm going to kind of look at the various types to explain a bit more. If you're looking at mini split systems, they work really well down to -13 degrees and at full capacity down to 5. If you're doing a ducted retrofit for air source, they work really well down to 30 degrees. And then for those couple days a year where it gets a bit cooler than that, they can shift to electric resistance heating, which is still a lot less expensive. So if you have like electric resistance or fuel oil, you're paying that premium price to use it during the cold months. And for the ducted retrofit, it would just be those, couple days a year, you'd be paying that kind of little bit of a premium price. So still saving a lot. When it comes to ground source heat pumps, because the outdoor portion is based underground, you're not losing efficiency based on the temperature. So those are really hardy. When we're looking again at traditional heating systems, when it gets cold, they have their issues too. For example, oil thickens and you have some other issues. But yes, the heat pumps that we chat about are really meant for cold weather temperatures. So heating and cooling, again, they can, as mentioned before, we can see in this little penguin image where he's walking on a boardwalk with no snow around them, question mark. They can heat and cool our home. And again, as mentioned, some dehumidifying. If we're looking at it from a health benefit side, it can really help with improving breathing conditions. So if you have a home that you've gotten weatherized or just are now able to keep it at good temperatures, it can really help when it comes to asthma and COPD. You're not getting that combustion to heat the home because it's not having to burn something. Again, it's using the existing air or the ground heat around it. Mini splits of air source heat pump variety can dehumidify the space. Mini splits also can come with allergy cartridges as well and filters. And if you're having a duct retrofit, those can come with special filters that you can select to help with any kind of allergens or other breathing concerns. So it can be a great fit to improve health and air quality in the home or your small business. So chatting a bit about safety, heat pumps can really give you a peace of mind. You don't have to worry about any kind of gas leaks. There's no worry about chimney fires because there's no creosote that would be building up in your chimney that you would get from like wood or pellet stoves. You're not getting any kind of worry of carbon monoxide poisoning. If you're in a tight spot and you're using those expensive fuels and you're in like a heat or eat situation and you're running your gas oven to keep warm, the heat pumps will help you to be able to afford to do the proper heating that you need, so you're not stuck in that kind of a position. And if you have grandkids or furry children, or dogs and cats and other creatures, maybe you have a lizard, I'm not sure what you might have in your home. No cords, no tripping hazards. I had a grandmother a couple years ago I was working with another energy program, and her heating system had gotten wiped out with a flood years ago. And through various events, she was basically using electric resistance plug-in heaters, which are really expensive. And she was so worried about her grandkids getting burnt on them or having tripping hazards. So these, you don't even have to worry about that, especially if you have the wall-mounted unit, they can't even get to it. Again, it can help decrease sickness in the home while increasing coziness. And this is for weatherization and or heat pumps. So if you're getting weatherization, you're getting cozier because you're getting those building blocks of insulation, air sealing. Remember that sweater chat we had where you have like your sweater and then your windbreaker. And also if you can, afford to heat a bit more comfortably to be cozier. So another way to look at this is like, why are we even looking at lowering our carbon footprint? Or maybe that's something that's important to you and you want to learn more, or it's just something that's piqued your interest or you've heard about in the media. So in 2014, yes, it takes them a while to get scientific data. So this is the most recent we have, but a lot of it still remains true. So it's estimating that in 2014, the greenhouse gas emissions or carbon emissions had a lot to do with it from fuel combustion. So about 32% of our carbon emissions or greenhouse gases, as they're called in New York State, come from heating and cooling. So that's a good chunk. New York State there's not a lot of information on it yet, but there's basically something called the CLCPA, known as the New York State Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which is going to have a lot of things coming into effect to make changes for its community members to help them and help make the change to electrification, which heat pumps are a part of because they run on electric. And they deal with that. Protection Act is also to achieve 80% reduction of those emissions by 2050. So we got a lot of work ahead of us, and we can do that in steps together by adopting heat pumps and or getting weatherization done in our homes. Easy maintenance. This is one of my favorite parts. I realize as my days get longer and it takes me a while to get home for the day, or maybe you have grandkids visiting, or you have a busy schedule of some sort. Easy maintenance, not something else to add to the checklist of things to have to do when you're not working or busy. So air source heat pumps are really easy to take care of. If you're looking at the mini splits like what Carla had, and Carla, if you haven't already, give a check on this. You just vacuum or rinse the filters every once in a while. The front part just pops off, and you can do that. And there's usually a little allergy cartridge that you can change in and out to get that working for you. It also can keep this, it's really doesn't take a lot of time, but keeping the space around your outdoor condenser unit, if you have a mini split, keep that area clear just so it can fully function. If you have a duct system for your air or ground source, just changing out that like filter every once in a while. And just like you would for kind of like a regular furnace, just a little clean and tune up to make sure the ducts are in good order. For ground source heat pumps, we won't see this so much with our program. There is a version called Open Loop. We won't get into the technical aspects, but if you have that system, our contractors will let you know really clearly and provide education, because those will need an acid flush every like 5 years, just to help with any kind of scaling due to the water around the area. And that's really cheap. It's like $150. And again, every 5 years. So it's even better than when you have to get your oil changed for your car, not nearly as often. So the point about talking about the benefits and the type of heat pumps and what would be leading to talking about incentives is to kind of get the messaging and ideas in your mind of asking yourself, not can I afford this, but can I continue to afford heating and or cooling the way I currently am? And you can interpret that in a monetary way. You can interpret that in an environmental way. You can interpret that in a way like maybe your heating system is just your nickel and diming to keep it running. Whatever way reaches you the best. But I want to go ahead and Carla, before we jump into incentives that people can take advantage of, did anyone have any questions about any of like the benefits?
I have one question from the last section.
Okay.
Can either heat pump be integrated into existing hydronic test distribution systems, such as a baseboard or an in-floor?
So the installer will have to check. So when you have a water-based hydronic system, those come in high and low temp, and you have one or the other. And one or the other of those doesn't work very well. So the installer will double check, but it definitely is the possibility of retrofitting into that radiant floor heating. Electric baseboard hot water systems can sometimes be retrofitted if it's the right temperature. There's just different measures that would be taken to help with cooling. Because when you do water-based retrofits, the cooling system is a bit different. It's not the same like a heat pump where you could like put on heat or cool. But definitely doable if it's the right temperature, or if you're putting in a new water-based system for ground source heat pump, there are definitely lots of options. Great question.
That's all I have.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I can't see if there's any deer in the headlights because I'm in presentation mode, but hopefully everyone's staying with me. Please keep the great questions coming. All right, so let's energize with incentives. This is my favorite part, when I get to chat with people and we can get a bunch of money to help with weatherization, or if they're interested in heat pumps or heat pumps in addition, seeing what money we can put together to help people. So we're going to have different slides and chatting about incentives for NYSEG. And when I say NYSEG, that's any major utility. So if you have a friend or family member who's in like National Grid area, or something else, the amounts might be a little different, but will be similar. And we'll also be chatting about incentives for municipal electric customers if you don't have access to a major utility company that you're using as well. So a little bit for everyone. So looking at incentives for heat pumps, we'll kind of chat first about air source. There's a term for most of the incentives. It's going to be based on something called for every so many BTUs of heating. And you're like, what is a BTU? So we won't get in the technical aspect, but 1 BTU is the equivalent of all the energy being released in one match being totally burnt up. So for air source heat pumps, you would be getting for every 10,000, so think of like 10,000 matches and all the energy that they're giving off from burning. For every 10,000 of those BTUs, you're getting $1,000. So the average home, their heating demand with that unit of heating is 25,000 to 60,000, which means you're getting an incentive amount from NYSEG / your major utility of $2,500 to $6,000. So this is just like the average home. You might have like a small cabin that's more, open space, and that might be on the lower end, or maybe you have like a bigger home or a business that is in like a house that's like a larger home. So this is just an average for the incentive we found. If you're doing partial heating, again, maybe just for that addition or space you're not heating that you want to heat now, we're looking at per outdoor condenser unit for the mini split, a $500 incentive. If we're looking at the other branch of the tree, the ground source heat pumps, their incentive for every 10,000 of those units we chat about is $1,500. So same demand, again, we still have those houses using 25,000 to 60,000 heating units. So the average incentive, if we do the math, is just shy of $4,000 to $9,000. Ground source heat pumps, whether you're major utility or municipal or any of that, there's a 26% federal tax credit if you have enough tax liability. So you just chat with your tax or bank person to find that out. All right, so say you live over in Bath, or maybe one of our sisters from over in Yates County is visiting and they live right in Penn and or maybe you're in Watkins Glen and Schuyler and you're like, well, I just have municipal electric, like I'm not connected with major utility. That's okay. So air source heat pumps, they have a blanket amount of $1,200 for a full home heating system. And for a partial heating system, again, that could be like maybe just have one or a couple mini splits, $800 incentive. For ground source heat pumps, there's a blanket amount of $2,000 for your using ground source as your 100% heating. And again, regardless of what utility you're with, you can get that 26% tax credit with if you have the tax liability. The only thing with municipal that's a bit different than the NYSEG is that they don't have it for new construction, but these amounts listed are for both small business as well as homes. All right, so it's easy to get in the weeds, so I'm just going to do a blanket amount. You're welcome to read this, or if you're phoning in, we'll make sure that we send out a copy of the slides to you. But for the heat pump water heaters, that was a version we said where they stand a bit taller, they can help dehumidify the home. NYSEG's offering incentive of anything from $700 to $900 because there are air source versus ground source versions. I'm happy to answer more of those questions in depth if people have a question about that, but just to go over the incentives. And there's a quick add-on you can do to supplement your hot water heating needs. If you have a ground source heat pump, and there's an incentive of $100. So that's for NYSEG or other major utilities. Municipal electric for either type of hot water heating use for heat pumps has a $750 incentive and that $100 for the add-on known as a desuperheater, just for heating with ground source heat pumps to offset your hot water needs. So again, I can dive definitely more in depth in these incentives, but why don't we keep going? And if people have questions, then I can get right into those answers. All right, thanks for hanging in with me. We're almost at the end, everyone. Thank you so much. If you are small commercial and you are looking for support to get the work done, again, if your business is small enough, you would use the same heat pump incentives for municipal electric or for the NYSEG incentives as mentioned. There's also support for getting weatherization, heat pumps, or other renewable work done through the USDA's REAP program, which stands for the Rural Energy for America program. So that's for rural small businesses and agriculture producers. They do loans and they also do competitive grants in the spring and the fall. And NYSEG also has additional incentives as well as municipal for different types of lighting retrofits. And NYSEG in addition has commercial and industrial rebates. If you're a small business and the heating system that you would need for heat pumps is large enough, they basically have a custom incentive that they would follow instead of per chunks of those heating units we chatted about earlier. So again, I can dive deeper into this, but just wanted to touch on that for now. All right, so I'm like, all right, so I figured out, what income level I am or, what incentives I can take advantage of because I chatted with Eric and we got this all figured out. But what about actual financing? So I was able to piggyback some different incentives, but say I need some support in paying for it. So for residential wise, there are NYSERDA low interest loans. If you are through a major utility company, you can take advantage of those. Or there's also credit unions. I know that if you live in, I believe it's Seneca and Schuyler, for example, Alternatives Federal Credit Union has special loans. So definitely check with your local credit unions and see what different options they have. And there's also traditional banking. If you're a small business or nonprofit, NYSERDA does have options for both municipal as well as major utility customers, which is great. And until the end of May or until funds run out, they have 0% interest loans for those small businesses or nonprofits. So chat with me if this might be a fit. Anyone can take advantage of the USDA REAP loan we chatted about for small business. And again, there's credit unions and traditional banking. So what are we looking at to chat with you from today and to get to know? So knowing that we're here to help you in your community, we really want to help everyone save money, save on energy, which can delve into many different reaches of, lowering the carbon footprint, helping with health and safety and much more. And knowing that heat pumps are a viable means to heat and cool your home or business, and knowing that how you can reach us, you can chat with me after the meeting, you can email me, you can call me, you can go on our website and soon to be Facebook page, not up yet, but we're getting that ready. And knowing that we are here to support you. So feel free to engage with us. There's no commitment by just chatting with us. We're here to just be a support for the community, and just feel free to become a volunteer, tell a friend, or just join us. So again, thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is, again, Erica Herman with the Heat Smart FLX South program. My email is E as in elephant, H as in Harry, 649@cornell.edu. Or you can reach our Cornell Poverty Extension office number at Schuyler, 607-535-7161. And you can find it from there, or if you put my extension 3223, you'll get me right away. And we also have our website, heatsmartflxsouth.org. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll leave this up for like a minute or two. So Carla, if there's one or two questions, I can take them now, and then I'll go off the screen and we can stop recording and people can just ask whatever they'd like.
There is one. What is the average cost of a heat pump water heater?
Heat pump water heater. So the average cost I've been seeing, so there's two different prices to look at. So I'm going to start, there's two branches. I'm going to start with the first branch. So with both of the incentives, whether it's municipal or it's NYSEG or major utility, you can get the incentive for a heat pump water heater, even if you do a self-install. If you do other heat pumps, you have to have it installed, but for these, you don't. So if you do a self-install, you're looking at roughly, and we don't endorse any specific companies, but like, for example, I looked up like a Home Depot or Lowe's, and they had one for about $1,200 to $1,400. And I'd been chatting with some people like, but I'm looking at electric resistance or on demand, and the price for that's like $450 to $650. Like, it's such a better deal just to do, the traditional one. And we actually chatted more because we realized when we did some research that even though the other one looks to be like almost double the price, when you're looking at that, it's 2 to 3 times more efficient. So you're recouping the savings there, plus adding on the $700 or $750 incentive from NYSEG or municipal electric, you're recouping those costs really fast. So that's the average cost. If you're looking at having an installer install it, this is just a ballpark number. It could be, up around $2,300 if you have an installer install it. You'd still be recouping costs because you're getting that $700 or $750 incentive. And it's that much more energy efficient, but just take a little, like a smidge longer to recoup because you'd be having an installer put it in.